Okay. So, you know how these days it seems like we can order almost anything online and it magically appears like right on our doorstep?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
But have you ever like stopped to think about just how much is going on behind the scenes?
It's crazy, like all the planning and logistics involved in getting a product, from a factory, maybe like halfway across the world, all the way to your house.
Totally. And that's what we're diving into today, the world of supply chain management, and more specifically, how these things called ERP systems are kind of like the brains of the operation.
Yeah, ERP stands for Enterprise Resource Planning, and it's really like the unsung hero of, making sure everything runs smoothly in a supply chain.
So for those of us who maybe don't spend our days, like knee deep in logistics, what exactly is an ERP system?
Well, think of it like this. It's basically like the central nervous system of a business. Like it's this big software system that connects all the different parts of a company.
Okay, so like all the different departments.
Yeah. Exactly, from finance to HR to like manufacturing, sales, you name it. And it lets them all talk to each other and share information in real time.
Huh. So instead of everyone working in their own little silos, it's more like one big interconnected.
Yeah, exactly. Like a giant web. And that's where the real magic happens.
Okay, I'm starting to see the picture here. So by bringing all these key functions together, like procurement, which I guess is just a fancy word for buying stuff.
Basically, yeah, sourcing and purchasing
Right,
materials.
and then production and distribution and like actually getting those products out to customers. It sounds like ERP gives businesses like a bird's eye view of their whole supply chain all in one place.
Exactly. And that real-time data aspect is huge. Like you were saying, imagine knowing exactly how much inventory you have at any given moment or where every single shipment is in transit.
Yeah, and like being able to predict potential delays before they even happen.
Oh, yeah. That's where it gets really interesting. Instead of just tracking current inventory, ERP systems can actually analyze like historical data, seasonal trends, even stuff like weather patterns to predict future demand.
Whoa, so it's like having a crystal ball for your business.
Kinda, yeah. It gives you these incredible insights that help you make smarter decisions about everything from how much to produce to like, where to allocate your
It's
resources.
not just about reacting to what's happening, it's about like getting ahead of the curve.
Exactly. And on top of all that, one of the coolest things about ERP is its ability to automate all these tasks that used to take tons of manual effort, like, order processing and invoice generation, even like tracking payments.
Oh yeah. I can already see how that would save businesses so much time and headaches.
Oh, absolutely. And it's not just about saving time, it's also about reducing errors.
Mhm.
When you're doing everything manually, there's always that risk of human error. But when you automate those processes, you can really minimize those mistakes.
That makes a lot of sense. And so by integrating all these functions, it sounds like ERP systems can actually help companies identify and eliminate what are called bottlenecks in their supply
Oh,
chains.
exactly.
Now, for someone who doesn't speak supply chain, can you break down what a bottleneck actually asks?
Sure. So a bottleneck is basically any point in the supply chain where things slow down or get stuck, kind of like a traffic jam. It could be something like a delay in getting raw materials, or maybe a production line that's not running at full capacity, or even a distribution center that's just overwhelmed with orders.
So it's like a pinch point where everything starts to back up.
Exactly. And the problem is if you don't catch those bottlenecks early on, they can really snowball into these like major issues.
Okay, so how does ERP help with that?
Well, the beauty of it is that it gives you that real-time visibility into your entire supply chain. So you can actually see those bottlenecks forming and you can address them before they become major problems.
So it's like having those like traffic cameras that give you a heads up about congestion ahead.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. And the other thing is ERP systems can help you pinpoint the root cause of a bottleneck.
Hmm.
Is it a supplier issue or a production issue or something else? And once you know the cause, you can start to brainstorm solutions.
So it's not just about seeing the problem, it's about like actually having the data to understand why it's happening and then figuring out how to fix it.
Exactly. It's like having a detective and a problem solver all rolled into one.
Okay, so we've been talking a lot about the benefits of ERP, all the amazing things it can do for businesses, but I'm sure it's not all sunshine and roses, right?
Well, like anything else, there are definitely some challenges that come with implementing these systems.
Like what?
Well, for one thing, these systems can be pretty complex. They often require a lot of customization to fit a company's specific needs and processes, which can be time-consuming and expensive.
So it's not like just buying a piece of software off the shelf and plugging it in.
Yeah, it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all solution. It's more like building a custom-designed house. You need to carefully consider the layout, the materials, and how everything will work together to create a functional and efficient space.
So it's a big investment.
It can be, yeah, but the potential ROI can be huge if it's done right.
Okay, so besides the complexity, what other challenges do businesses face?
Well, one of the biggest hurdles is often the human element. People naturally resist change, especially when it involves learning new systems and processes.
I can imagine that, yeah, like no matter how great a new system is, there's always going to be some pushback from people who are used to doing things the old way.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to have a really solid change management strategy in place. You need to make sure that everyone understands the benefits of the new system and that they have the training and support they need to make the transition as smooth as possible.
So it's about communication and training and really making sure that everyone feels comfortable with the change.
Exactly. You need to get everyone on board and excited about this new way of doing things.
Okay, so we've talked about the power of real-time data, the ability to automate tasks, and the importance of change management. But I'm curious to hear about some real-world examples of how companies are using ERP to transform their supply chains. So let's dive into that in part 2.
Sometimes I think the best way to really get a feel for, how powerful ERP can be is to look at like a real world example.
Totally. And even though our source material doesn't give us like a specific case study, maybe we could like come up with a hypothetical scenario.
Sure, yeah, let's do that. Let's imagine a company, let's call them Green Wheels, bikes. They make and sell bicycles. And, they've been around for a few years doing okay, but they're still relying on like a bunch of different systems, spreadsheets for inventory emails, flying back and forth for orders, maybe even some sticky notes, reminding them to order more tires.
Ah, yes, the classic growing pains of a successful business. I can practically hear those spreadsheets like groaning under the weight of all that data.
Exactly. And as you can imagine, things start to slip through the cracks. They're constantly running out of popular parts. Orders get delayed because someone missed an email, and their customer service team is like constantly getting calls from frustrated customers wondering where their new bikes are.
So they're at a crossroads, right? Like they can keep trying to patch things up as they go.
Or they can realize, you know what, we need a more streamlined solution. We need something to bring it all together.
And that's where ERP comes in.
Exactly. They decide to take the plunge and implement an ERP system.
Okay, so they bring in the ERP cavalry. What happens next?
Well, first of all, you can finally say goodbye to those spreadsheets. They can go into retirement.
Oh, sweet relief.
I know, right? So with ERP, Green Wheels now has this single unified system for managing their whole operation. Inventory levels are automatically updated in real time as bikes are built and sold.
So no more like manually counting tires in the warehouse.
Exactly. And every time a sales order comes in, it automatically triggers a procurement request for the necessary components, so they always have the right materials on hand.
So no more scrambling to find parts at the last minute or disappointing customers with back orders because they're missing a crucial piece.
Precisely. And because everything is connected, their production planning gets a major upgrade. They can see exactly which orders need to be filled. They can prioritize production based on real-time demand. They can even forecast potential bottlenecks before they even arise.
So they've gone from being reactive to proactive. They're like riding the wave instead of getting crushed by it.
Exactly. And that kind of agility leads to faster turnaround times on customer orders, which means happier customers and ultimately more profits.
And I imagine they probably freed up their team from a ton of those manual tasks, too.
Oh, absolutely. All that time they were spending on data entry and reconciliation, they can now focus on more strategic initiatives, things that actually move the needle for the business.
That makes sense. And with all that real-time data at their fingertips, they can make more informed decisions about everything, right? Like pricing marketing campaigns, even like developing new bike models based on what the data tells them customers want.
Exactly. It's like they've traded in their old clunky 3-speed for a high-performance mountain bike. They're ready to tackle any terrain.
I love that analogy.
Mm-hmm.
But even with all these amazing benefits, we can't forget that implementing an ERP system is a pretty big undertaking.
Yeah, for sure. It's not just about the technology itself. It's about changing the way a whole company operates.
Right. It requires buy-in from everyone from the top down.
Absolutely. And as we talked about earlier, managing that human element, that change management piece is absolutely crucial.
Okay, so let's go back to Green Wheels for a second.
Yeah.
Imagine they roll out this shiny new ERP system, but they haven't really prepared their employees for it.
Oh, boy. Yeah, that's a recipe for disaster.
I'm picturing a lot of blank stares, frustration, maybe even a few folks longing for the good old days of spreadsheets.
Exactly. Suddenly that high-performance mountain bike feels more like a unicycle teetering on the edge.
So what's the key to avoiding that kind of scenario?
Communication training and support, you got to make sure that everyone understands why they're making this change, how to use the new system effectively, and that there's help available when they inevitably run into problems.
So it's like having a guide on a challenging bike trail, someone who can point out the obstacles, show you the best path.
Exactly. And that just highlights how important the human element is in all of this. Technology is a powerful tool, but it's only as effective as the people who are using it.
So true. So we've talked a lot about the present state of ERP, but our source material also mentioned some pretty cool future trends. And one that really caught my eye was the integration of AI and machine learning. Like, can you give us a glimpse into what that might look like?
Sure. So imagine Greenwheel's ERP system, but now it's supercharged with AI. It's not just tracking inventory levels, it's predicting them weeks or even months in advance based on historical data sales trends, even like social media buzz about upcoming cycling events.
Whoa, it's like having a digital soothsayer whispering, stock up on mountain bikes. There's a big race coming up.
Exactly. And it goes beyond just inventory. AI can help optimize delivery routes, factoring in things like real-time traffic and weather to ensure those bikes get delivered on time. It can even analyze customer data to personalize marketing campaigns, suggesting specific models or accessories based on individual preferences.
So it's taking all that data and turning it into actionable insights.
Exactly. And I think we're moving towards a world where ERP systems are less about reacting to what's happening and more about anticipating and shaping the future.
That's pretty exciting. And alongside AI, our source material also mentioned another game changer, blockchain technology. So how does that fit into the world of ERP?
Well, blockchain is all about creating these like super secure, transparent, and tamper-proof records. So in the context of supply chain management, it can be used to track the journey of a product, from its origin all the way to the customer, ensuring authenticity and building trust.
So like if Green Wheels claims their bikes are made with sustainably sourced materials, blockchain could actually prove that.
Exactly. It's like having a digital passport for each product that records every step of its journey. Customers could scan a QR code on their new bike and see the entire history from where the materials were sourced to how it was manufactured.
Wow, that's incredible. It brings a whole new level of transparency to the supply chain.
Absolutely. And that's just scratching the surface,
Uh-huh.
Blockchain can also be used to streamline payments, reduce fraud, even create new business models based on secure data sharing.
It sounds like AI and blockchain have the potential to like revolutionize ERP and the way businesses operate. But with all this talk about, cutting edge tech, I'm curious, what does this all mean for the average person, someone who's not, directly involved in supply chain management?
That's a great question. I think the impact of these advancements will be felt in a lot of ways, even if we don't always see the technology behind it.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Paint me a picture of this future.
Okay, so imagine a world where products are delivered faster and more reliably than ever before, where you can track the origin and sustainability of the things you buy with complete transparency, where personalized recommendations help you find exactly what you need even before you know you need it.
So a world of convenience, efficiency, and maybe even a little bit of magic.
Exactly. And that's the exciting part. As these technologies keep evolving and integrating with ERP systems, we can expect to see even more innovative applications that will shape the future of business and our daily lives in ways we can only begin to imagine.
Now, we've covered a lot of ground today, from the basics of ERP to the mind-boggling potential of AI and blockchain. Yeah. But before we wrap things up, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what this all means for the future of work. Yeah, as these systems become more sophisticated and automated, what role will humans play in the supply chain of tomorrow?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? Like, will we all end up getting replaced by robots?
Great. Like it's straight out of science fiction. The machines take over.
It's definitely a valid concern, but I think the future of work and supply chain management, it's less about replacement and more about like humans and technology kind of working together.
Okay, so like instead of us managing spreadsheets and, chasing down inventory reports, we're going to be focusing more on like the strategic stuff, the creative problem solving.
Exactly. Imagine supply chain professionals becoming more like orchestra conductors. They're not playing every instrument, but they're making sure everything's in sync.
Yeah.
That the whole symphony is working together.
Ah, so they're like overseeing the whole operation, making sure it all flows smoothly.
Exactly. And they can step in, when needed to fine-tune things or troubleshoot problems or adapt to unexpected changes.
So it's not about one replacing the other. It's about finding that balance, that harmony.
Exactly. And that's what's so exciting. These technologies are becoming like powerful tools that augment our abilities. They
Yeah.
help us work smarter, not harder.
Like a superpowered assistant who can handle all the tedious stuff, freeing us up to focus on the bigger picture.
That's a great way to put it. And I think that shift, it's going to open up a ton of new opportunities for innovation and collaboration. Imagine teams of humans and AI working together to design, like more resilient supply chains, developing sustainable practices, even like creating products that, truly meet the needs of customers and the planet.
It's like technology and human ingenuity coming together to create something truly amazing.
Absolutely. And I think the key takeaway here is, don't be afraid of the change that's coming. Embrace it. These advancements might seem daunting at first, but they have so much potential to create positive change?
So instead of worrying about the robots taking over, we should be thinking about how we can work with them. How we can harness their power to build a better future.
Exactly. The future of work and supply chain management, it's not about being replaced. It's about becoming the architects of this, like, more interconnected, efficient, and human-centric world.
Wow, I love that. And for our listeners who want to, learn more about all this, we'll be sure to share some links to the source material and some other cool resources in the show notes.
And as always, we love hearing from you. So what are you most curious about when it comes to ERP and supply chain management? Share your questions and thoughts on social media, and let's keep this conversation going.
Absolutely. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. And until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.